When you hear the phrase, thou shalt not kill, what comes to your mouth?
Don't do it.
Do you feel like that holds more weight than other things for you, than the addiction, than other things that maybe you were involved with in your life? Does that have a little more heaviness to you?
At that point in time of my life, no. It was living by the streets. You either get killed or you're gonna kill somebody. I mean, it's basically the streets was tough streets, you know? No, I mean, that's just the way of life that I know it's hard to imagine that, but
So you didn't ponder too much about life and death. It was just kind of, it was what it was.
well, you know, like I said from the beginning, I mean, what made me more dangerous than most people is I didn't value my life. In other words, I put myself out there a lot of times that I should have got killed. I was just part of the life. I mean, basically, you're living in the streets, there's chances that you're gonna get killed.
Did you have any concept though of like what would happen to you after you died? Was that even something that you thought about?
No, you know, I live day to day, man. I didn't live with any future life after this or future for tomorrow. I mean, that's why I was never really a big money maker. I made money, but I spent it just as quick as I made it, either gambling, going out, drugs, whatever it is. So I lived day to day. That was just kind of the lifestyle I lived. Unfortunately, when I look back at it now, it's like, dang, I mean, how could you even believe? I mean, how did you even come up with these things in your mind, in your life? I mean, it's just weird. You know, look what I put my family through.
But did you have a concept though of an afterlife, of heaven, hell? Was that even in your mind frame?
Yeah. God's up there, I'm down here. Someday we'll get together and see what happens. That's how I thought about it. I knew of God, but I never knew God.
Talk to us about John Gotti. What happened?
Well, I don't have a lot to say about John Gotti. John Gotti was very feared and respected. So, I mean, that's, if you heard John Gotti's name, he was a household name after a while. I mean, I think, from my understanding, I think he was on the Time magazine 2 or 3 different times, which is really something. So he was kind of a household. If you mention John Gotti, anywhere in the world probably would know John, well, anywhere in the United States anyway, would know him, you know? So, but I never had a lot going on. I had some encounters with his son, but never with John. Only one time something happened where somebody got shot. And of course, in the certain neighborhoods, if anybody got shot, I would be the prime suspect with the mob or the law. Somebody got shot and paralyzed, and John Gotti used to have a feast on 101st Avenue, and I was hanging out on 108th Street and 101st Avenue. And somebody, I think, went and told him Robert Engel's around and he's going to shoot up the neighborhood, which was no truth. I don't know. So he sent some people to come and get me from his crew and bring me back to him. And when they approached me, I always carried a gun, but I didn't pull it out or anything. I just let them know, no. The first they asked me, do you have a gun? They said, you give it to me. I ain't giving you my gun. Am I an idiot? And they said, well, Johnny wants to see you. I said, well, tell Johnny that he needs to go through Nicky if he wants to see me, because Nicky was the guy I was underneath. I had no business talking with John Gotti on a personal level. And they went back, and I never heard anything more about it after that. That was my encounter with him. But I had a few encounters with his son.
His son?
Yeah, John Jr.
Who was Nicky?
Nicky's the carousel guy that you had mentioned earlier.
Okay, that's right.
That was my mentor.
That was your mentor, yeah. And so this was some of you mentioned, you talked about in the books. In the book, there was this. I guess there were factions within the Gambino family, different competing and warring factions. So was John had his own kind of clique within it, and you were a part of another.
Yes. Yes. There was a lot of, I got to be, I just want to be careful with how I say things. I want people to get the wrong impression. The Gambino crime family was the largest family at the time that I was around, the largest and most powerful family of the 5 families. So you had crews all over the place that belonged to the Gambino crime family, but there was always competition between the crews. Who had more guys around them, who was more powerful than the other crew, and nonsense like that there. I mean, there was times when I couldn't talk to somebody else, even though it was the same family, but different crew, that I wasn't able to talk to them because I came from a different crew. So it was kind of weird in certain things. But just to give you the knowledge of any of the 5 families, you had a boss, you had an underboss, you had a consigliere, and then you had capos, which is captains, and then you had soldiers, which was main men, and then you had associates. Johnny and Nicky at that time were both soldiers, made men. I was just an associate, so I had no jurisdiction whatsoever to go speak to John Gotti about anything, and I knew that. So the only right thing to do is him and Nicky could speak, and then if they want to bring me there to find out whatever it was about, that would be the right way to do it. And Johnny knew that. That's why he never pushed the issue anymore.
So you have ambitions of getting to, you could. Well, I guess you couldn't be in the past.
I couldn't, but I could have been another. I don't want to mention too many names, but since Jimmy Burke is out there, I could have been like another Jimmy. Jimmy Burke was very powerful, very fit, made a ton of money, well respected, but could never get straightened out. But he was held in high esteem in the family that he was part of, and all 5 families recognized Jimmy Burke, even though he was just an associate.
So in order to get to capo status, you have to be straightened out.
You have to be straightened out.
So man, the most that you could do is get as much power, money, and fame as you possibly can if you can't get straightened out, right?
There you go. And this is your question from earlier. I wanted a reputation.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. This is a funny term. I'm sure that everybody in America thinks it's funny. People use it very flippantly, and they call people a wise guy. Like, what is that even? What does that terminology mean?
Well, there's different things that the wise guys, I think, might have came a little bit more from the movie. Anyway, it was Goodfellas, but the original name that they wanted to give it was Wise Guys. That was the original name, so they changed it. A wise guy, when you were a kid, there was because if you had a mouth that always answered back, what are you, a wise guy? Something like that there. We're eventually him up. In the beginning, it was noted as a button. He got his button. When I was younger, that's what it was called. He's a button guy. And then it became, he got straightened out, and then the other terminologies came into it. So a wise guy would be considered somebody that was already part of some family, of the one of the 5 families.
What do you think the allure around the mob is with American society and culture? Why are people so infatuated with the mafia? I even look at, a place like down here at Campese's. It always amazes me when I go into Campese's, and people love to eat Campese's, and you go in there and they've got mobsters on the walls. It's like I never understood why are we glorifying mafia. What's that all about?
Well, Hollywood did a good job with it. That's number one. If you go back even to the earlier days, Gangsters was really, I always consider myself more of a gangster than mafia kind of guy. Because I lived in the streets, and I did the street thing, People came into my neighborhood, messed around, I had to take care of it. That's how I see myself. And that was back in the days where you seen gangsters. I mean, movies were made with gangsters, and the luxury of it, they always had the pretty girl, the nice car, they had everything. And I mean, you go back even to Al Capone's days. I mean, Here's a guy that had status like anything. People were respected for him. Took care of the neighborhood. That's the other thing. They take care of your neighborhood. My neighborhood, if something happened in my neighborhood, the wise guys took care of it.
It's an interesting dynamic because, again, I grew up in Southern California, and you have gangs obviously out there, and there seems to be a heavy protection aspect, but who are you protecting the neighborhood from?
Yourself. That's an old thing. If you watch, there was a movie years back called The Black Hand. And it shows you when the mob came from Sicily, a lot of the immigrants down in downtown Manhattan opened up stores and stuff like that. Grocery stores, meat markets and stuff like that, butchers, all those things that they had trades for, they brought it here to our country. And then you had the Black Hand, which was the original, the tough guys back in Sicily, and they came and followed. So there's a movie, and it showed you that if you didn't pay them protection, your store something would happen to your store. So it's basically you're paying them to protect you from them.
That's my point, right? Is it seems like you're protecting the neighborhood from who? It seems like the individuals that are involved in these families are the ones that are bringing in the drugs, bringing in the crime, bringing in the murders. So,
Back when I was younger, you didn't see a lot of the drugs back then, the mob with the drugs. At least the family that I was involved with, I didn't see any of the guys in the clubs doing anything like that. Drinking was a pretty big thing. Having your drinks and stuff. There was a bar right down the block from it. So you didn't see a lot of that. You didn't see a lot of murders in the neighborhood. You know what I mean? They were well respected. I mean, that's what got my attention. They were well respected by everybody in the neighborhood. But the other thing was, nobody would rob your store in my neighborhood because the mob would make sure something happened to you that would not make you want to rob again in the neighborhood. That was part of it. But also, if you refuse to give them what they wanted, then they'll make sure something does happen.
how hard is it to sever ties with the mafia? What's your tell?
If you're straightened out, you can't.
If you're straightened out, you can't.
No. I know people say that they do. I don't know how much of it's true, to be honest with you. It might have changed since I haven't been involved with that life in 20-something years now. So I don't know if it's changed since then, but they will put you on a shelf means that you're really not involved anymore, and then they could take you back off the shelf and get you back involved, but you really can never really leave. Now, Michael Francis is another story, and there's a lot of stories that I heard about that there, why he was able to leave, but his father was one of the big guys in the Colombo family. And his father was well respected and one of the toughest guys around. So I don't know if that helped him or not, but and I'm not sure. I'm really not sure.
So it's pretty much you get shelled or they take you out of there. You gotta leave.
Yeah.
Where is the Gambino crime family today?
I have no idea, to be honest with you. I don't bother with it. I'm not interested in it anymore. I'm sure they're not interested in me, at least not too much anyway, anymore. But I don't know. I know that it's not where it used to be. Things have changed. You got cameras all over the place. So the concept of how you used to do things, even if you to kill somebody, something like that, everybody has cameras all over the place. So you have to be a little bit more careful on how you're doing something like that. I think most of it will probably be through the internet right now. That's just my thought. But they have businesses too. They still have their hand in construction and stuff like that.
What is the kiss of death? What is that?
Well, I could tell you a story about that, but if somebody kissed you on the lips, a guy, my brother-in-law, I was sent for by Nicky Carrazzo. I was getting all messed up with the drugs. And my brother-in-law with a couple of guys came to get me out of this bar that I was hanging out with. and he gave me a kiss on the lips. And I thought I was going to my grave, but I still went. But I had an Uzi strapped to my chest. They didn't know that, because I was walking around with an Uzi. I was really paranoid, so I walked around with an Uzi. I had it strapped to my chest. I had it covered. Anyway, long story short, I thought that's what they were going to do. The only thought I had in my mind is I'm going to take out as many as I can before they kill me. But if they really wanted to kill me, as soon as I got in the car, I would have got popped in the head. So, but I thought that was my death sentence. But usually that's what I think it means. But that's a lot of Hollywood too, so I'm not sure.
But you obviously have enough apprehension about it.
I did.
So what did it end up being? Was it much to do about nothing, or were you?
When they brought me to it, believe me, it was right by the water in Mill Basin. And one of the guys said, Nikki's not here. So I don't know if it was a test to see if I would come in anyway. I don't know if it was a test to see if I was doing anything I wasn't supposed to be doing that I would not want to go in. I don't know what it was, but eventually they drove me back to where I was hanging out.
Wow, that's crazy. What are black market cigarettes?
Well, it's just the way. Usually, years back, I was involved with that. They would buy cigarettes, like in Maryland or something like that, where they were a lot cheaper because they weren't taxed or anything like that. And then you bring them into the United States and you sell them to people. So if you were paying maybe $2 a carton, you sell them for $5 a carton.
So they brought you said from Maryland?
Maryland, other places that didn't have the high tax at the time on their cigarettes.
It just seems like a small thing to be hustling. Cigarettes, that's crazy.
You'd be surprised how much money is involved in it. People bring truckloads. So maybe 4,000 or 5,000 cartons of cigarettes, making $3 on every carton that you sell, selling them in maybe 2 weeks, so you got $15,000.
It seems like the
And there's not much time behind it, right?
and so it's low risk, high yield.
Yes. Yeah.
How important is gambling and illegal gambling into the economy of the mafia?
How I looked at it was, I think what the government was trying to do is lessen the mob's activity in gambling. So the first thing I believe they did was OTB, off-track betting. They opened up off-track betting. Now, if you couldn't go to the racetrack, you would bet on a horse and give the slip to the bookmaker, listen to it, and if the horse won, you could go collect your money. If you lost your money. So OTBs kind of eliminated a lot of that, but now you could go to OTB, you didn't have to go to the racetrack, and they had one, I don't know, every mile away from each other or something like that. So you could go hang out in OTB. It was like going to the track and gamble instead of giving your money to the mob. That was one of the things. And then numbers was a big thing for the mob, taking numbers. My mom played numbers every day. Maybe 10 cents, 20 cents, just trying to get a couple extra dollars. Then the government started having their own numbers. And then before you know it, the lotto and all that kind of stuff came in.
What? Okay, stop this for a second. So you're telling me that the government started to run numbers,
Yeah.
which is the lottery.
No, even before the lotto, they had the 3 numbers. They still have it today.
So
You could go to a store and say, I want to play the daily number. And a number will come out every day. And it's, I think, 500 or 600 to 1. The same thing the mob will give you for every dollar. So it's legal. You didn't know that?
I'm not a gambler.
Okay.
I've never have been. You know, I never have felt lucky enough to be involved in gambling. The fear of losing money makes my stomach turn.
It's good.
So I just never got into it. So I just find it interesting that the very thing that the government is legalized and is making, it's like they're running their own legal racket.
They're making money, that's for sure. Because even if you win the lotto, they're going to get half of it anyway, right? So if it's $1 billion and you won $1 billion, they're going to get 500 million, aren't they?
Yeah, he got better.
But a lot of that, I think, was copied from the mob. And it was to try to, I don't know the right word to say, I wouldn't say diminish, but take some profits away from them by legalizing gambling.
You had a story in The Witness where you maybe had borrowed some money from the family that you weren't supposed to. You gamble it away.
I didn't borrow it. I was working one of the crap games. I mean, I was just one of those guys that everybody liked, no matter who it was. There was different bosses, different guys from different families. When I started hanging out in Mulberry Street, everybody liked me. Some of them even wanted to buy me. How's that there? I was just a well-liked guy. And one time, the guy that runs the game had to leave. So he said, do me a favor, I gotta go someplace. When the game ends, you take that money, go home, and then bring it back the next day. Now, the game didn't start until 2 in the afternoon. The track opened up at 12, so I figured, I got about an hour, I'll go to the track and gamble a little bit. And before you know it, I was losing a couple of hundred here, a couple of hundred there, and I couldn't make up for it. So I tried to bet a lot of money to make up for the couple of $100. And long story short, I lost almost all the money. So when they called me up to say, what happened? Why didn't you come to the game? Where's the money? I told the guy what happened, and he said, well, how much is left? I mean, I'll help you out. I said, about $800 out of 10,000. And he couldn't help me out, so I had to run away from the mob for a little bit. But Nicky loved me so much that he put together money, brought it to the bosses, because you're talking about big bosses. You're talking about bosses of crime families involved with this here. It's a death sentence. He brought a bankroll to them, and they said Robert got locked up and his mother didn't know where he hid the money in his house. So we just found out where it is, here it is.
So they made up a story for you.
He made up a story for me.
Man, you weren't lying when you said there's plenty of times that you probably should have got the axe, and
Yeah.
God was kind of, even though you didn't acknowledge, that's why I asked you those questions about did you have any concept of life or death or spirituality, because a lot of times I find that even though a person's not walking with God, there's still like this consciousness that they have, they're aware of like something or there's something protecting them from something. But
I thought it was Nicky. So I thought it was Nicky all my life. Well, I mean, there was guys that were waiting for me by my house. I just didn't go home that day. And he would squash it from me. Things that I did that I wasn't supposed to do, that what might have been where another family thought that we're going to kill this guy. He would get word for it, say, don't go home. And he would sit down, whatever family it was that was trying to kill me, and squash it from me. So my Nicky was, in a sense, my God. But I never thought of God. Today I could see was God's hand on me. And the reason why I could see it now is because all along he had a plan of purpose for me. He just couldn't get my attention. And finally, he did get my attention. So I don't think God's shocked. I can't believe Robert got saved.
no,
You know what I mean?
I'm the one that's shocked that you didn't get killed. All these stories, for me, that's where
It was God's hand on my life all along, even though I didn't know it was his hand.
What are policies? You see
That's numbers.
that's the numbers are?
Yeah.
Okay, and the slips that you used to deliver, those are the
Yeah.
numbers. You know, I want to ask this question. You know, I think I already asked that already. What was the dynamic between the Gambino crime family and the other 4 families for territory, power, status around the city of New York?
I can't answer that question because I never really got into the politics of the mob. I never tried to focus on all that. I mean, you had families that were in the same neighborhood. I guess they had agreements on who does what and how they do certain things. As long as they didn't step on each other's toes or try to take somebody's. If I had a guy that was betting with me You couldn't try to take him from me because he was already with me at that point in time. Even though he's a gambler, he's not a member or even associate, but he's around me because he's gambling with my thing. So there's certain structures that you had, but I never really got into the politics of it. My thing was a reputation in the neighborhood wherever I was. That was my thing. So if I was hanging out in a bar and somebody came into the bar and started trouble, I would take that as personal disrespect to me. Not the people that owned it, because I'm there and you shouldn't be doing that when I'm there.
The other boroughs, I mean, you're a Brooklyn guy. I mean, what was it like with the other boroughs?
Well, you had Gambino family in every borough. Oh yeah, I told you, it was the largest, most powerful. So Staten Island, Manhattan, they were all over the place. Every borough had 5 families in those boroughs.
Did you kind of primarily stay in Brooklyn, or did you venture out into other boroughs?
I ventured out here, and I ended up venturing out to Queens later on, as I got older, because Brooklyn just wasn't the same anymore. Even the wise guys were moving out of our little neighborhood and going maybe to Canarsie, Queens, and other areas of what they were doing. So,
You had a story about a third-degree electrical burn.
that's not me. I wasn't even there. My brother, my older brother, was there. We used to play on the Long Island Railroad. On Atlantic Avenue, we had the Long Island Railroad that ran through. Most of it was underground, but some of it came up around on Atlantic Avenue. And it was an access for you to get on the Long Island Railroad. And then there was an under thing where you could go underneath it and go to the other side of Atlantic Avenue. And we used to play on the Long Island Railroad. Matter of fact, we used to walk on the walls and see how far we can go to the next stop. And then you put your initials on. It's kind of like an initiation kind of thing. Who could walk the farthest, and we have to put our initials. This is how far I went before we came back. So we played on it, and this one time, this guy, Ralphie, was playing. They were playing with the guys, and he threw something metal, and it hit the third rail and exploded. And one of my good friends got caught on fire. So it was a big thing, and I think what they did was, instead of anybody suing the Long Island Railroad, Long Island Railroad has their own police. They came, smoked at my house, and a couple of people that were there, because my brother was there, and they didn't arrest anybody. But he got burnt out pretty good. I mean, he's okay now, but he got burnt up pretty good.
That's crazy. You guys were knucklehead little kids running around doing all kinds of stuff, though. You had a story that you talked about with your social worker. You know what I'm talking about? In the book?
I had quite a few. You talked about the one in grammar school.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what you would say I was. I was a guy that needed a lot of attention, let's put it that way. So I was always in trouble in school. Either I talked when you weren't supposed to talk, or stuff like that. So they thought the best thing for me is to go see a social worker. So every hour of my class time, I would go see the social worker, who I really liked. Very pretty young girl. I was probably about maybe 12 years old at the time, and she would talk to me about my issues and stuff like that.
Why in the book you talk about this Mr. Garcia. Why'd you ask your hatred for him?
I didn't have the hatred for him. He accused me of robbing his store, which he wasn't wrong, but he couldn't prove it. So he said he was going to call the cops on me. So I don't know how old I was, maybe 13, 14 years old. So when he said that, I said, if you call the cops on me, I'll burn your store down. At that same day that I said that to him, we're going to have a gang fight. So the guy said, let's make Molotov cocktail bombs, and we'll throw it at the guys, not to really hurt them, but with the fire, and they would run away, and we win the fight, because they would retreat. So I had a bike, and they gave me a couple of, I think it was like maybe 35 cents a gallon in them, I don't remember, but they gave me a couple of change, and I had a bike, and I went, and I bought gasoline from the store, put it in a bottle or something, container or something. But we're doing it, and I have to pass that guy's store. So he sees me with gasoline, thinks I'm gonna burn his store down, and he calls the cops. But we already made, by the time the cops came, we already made like, I don't know, 20 Molotov cocktail bombs already. So the cops come over and they question me. You say you're gonna burn this guy's store down and he's seen you with gasoline. I said, I don't have no gasoline. And they said, that's funny because it smells like a lot of gasoline around here right now. Because we had it in the back, in the back of the stoop. Well, anyway, long day. So they went back there, they found the gasoline bombs and I got locked up. So when we went to court for it, which was family court once again, somehow a fire marshal came and said, there's no way this young kid could have made those kind of cocktail bombs. They were too professionally made. So they dismissed the case.
Wow. The non-expert got you.
That's what they say. I don't know the whole story of it. I don't know. I was a kid at the time, so I really don't know what was behind all that.
This was the RNET. This was the RNET gang. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
F&R.
F&R.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we had a theme song. F&R on the hill, never ran and never will. Front in the east, front in the west. F&R is still the best.
I like that. You guys were rapping back then. I love it. I love it. Okay. All right. I want to get into some heavy stuff. Okay. Tell me about the Lufthansa heist.
Well, I wasn't involved in it, you know.
But you talk about it in the book, though. I mean, there's quite a few millions of this heist. The guys that you.
Well, I was there. Well, you know, Louis and his wife, they get killed. I mean, he let me know that he was part of it. After, you know, Jimmy Burke said nobody don't flash nothing. They'll keep the quality.
What is it for those that don't?
Oh, do you know what the Lufthansa heist is? Oh,
yeah, and people watching this may have.
and one of the largest heists in the United States at that time from the cargo area. Lufthansa was a cargo. They had, you know, transported goods in the airport, from the airport. So from my understanding, I don't know if this is true or not, I'm just giving what I was told. I don't know if it's a true story or not, so please don't let nobody hold me to it. From my understanding, there was somebody that worked in there that was a bad gambler and owed a lot of money to Jimmy Burke. And he knew this thing was coming in and mentioned it to Jimmy, and they set it up where they would go and rob it, and it was, I don't know, how many millions of dollars plus a certain amount of millions of dollars in jewelry and stuff like that, so.
And some of your guys were involved in.
Not from my crew. No, there was all Jimmy Burke put his own crew together to do that. And my friend Louis happened to be around Jimmy Burke at that point in time, so.
And so your buddy Louis and his wife that got killed.
Everybody was told, don't splash money, don't show off, don't be buying. They gave everybody, from my understanding, once again, I don't know if it's true or not. I wasn't there, don't know much about it. But my understanding was everybody got a couple of dollars, and the rest was supposed to be put away until this thing blew over. Because they knew it was going to get a lot of heat on it. And some of the guys took it and either bought their wives for a coach or brand new Cadillacs and stuff like that. So Jimmy was a very paranoid guy. And if you didn't listen to what Jimmy said, he didn't have no problem eliminating you. To save his own neck, I guess, because it would have brought a lot more heat to him. And they had a big suspicion that he was involved in it, but they couldn't prove it, so he had to make sure they didn't prove it.
Tell us a story about when you stabbed the bartender.
Well, there was a fight in the bar, and I don't know, this guy thought he was going to be a hero and jumped over the bar to approach me, and he got stabbed. It was either me or him. I mean, you know, I don't want to say it like that because I regret those things now, but at that point in time, you bring me back in my mindset at that time. So that's why I'm saying it the way I'm saying it now. So I don't believe in any of that now, but that was the way it was. So if you're gonna approach me, I'm gonna do what I have to do to protect myself. I didn't tell him to jump over the bar.
He should have made a decision, right?
He should have still been serving drinks. No.
I love matter of factness though. I love it.
That's just a joke, guys. Everybody that might be watching this, I don't live like that anymore. But when you bring me to that mindset, it makes the mind wonder.
Rob may, I don't know, he may think otherwise. I don't know.
I've spent a lot of time. Yeah, go ahead and leave it. So that makes a difference.
So I want to hear the story though about the gang that retaliated against you for cutting up one of their friends, and you got saved by an undercover cop because there were a bunch of guys with bats coming after you.
Yeah, I was either 17 or 18 at the time.
Was this FNR or was this Gambino?
This was when I started hanging out with Fat Andy, who was the boss of the neighborhood's son in Queens on 101st Avenue. So we used to go to this bar and hang out. I don't remember the guy, but I must have did something. So I'm by a friend's house, and I get a phone call. Hey, a whole bunch of guys came in here, and we think we're going to have some trouble. We need you to come here right away. So I run there. It's only 2 blocks away, so I run to the bar, and before I could even open up the door, they were waiting for me. So they came out. Now, I wasn't going to run away. I was going to fight them, but I didn't know how many there were. So back in them days, you had those long antennas off of cars, and they're pretty good weapons. So I break one off of a car, and I open it up, and it goes really long, so it's really to keep people at a distance. But there was too many of them. They had bats and whatever they had. So I said, it's time to retreat. So I ran. And I ran away, and then I figured, I'm running out of gas. So I start running back to where my friends might be. And through the course of that, I have my copper cutter in my hand, and I'm just going like this. And finally, they get me, they knock me down. And it happened to be, I didn't know who it was at the time, but this guy puts his car in the middle of the street, takes out his gun and points it at them and says, hey. And I forget what he said, but I thought he was one of the guys from the neighborhood. So I asked him to give me his gun. I wanted to shoot him. He happened to be an undercover cop. So I went to the hospital because I cut my own hand open, got some stitches done, and they got locked up. So they wanted me to come and testify against them in the grand jury, and they came to my house, dragged me to court, but they left me by myself, and I just walked out and went home, and they never bothered me again. But at that point in time, I would say this, in my mind, I just thought if I ever have a fight like that again, or I do damage like that to somebody, I'm going to make sure they can't come back to get me.
You kept your mouth shut about a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So, with you being in the witness protection program, the idea of the concept of snitching is a big deal, right? You don't want, in the gang bang culture in the black community, they say you don't want that jacket on you. It's called the snitch jacket. How important was that, maintaining that reputation of being somebody who doesn't tell? And secondly, did you fear that you were going to get that stigma on you when you went into witness protection?
Oh, sure. We used to call it back in the days a stool pigeon. And then it became a rat. But in the beginning, it was don't be a stool pigeon. The culture in everybody's culture was always taught, never tell on your friends. I could look back at that now and say, man, I wonder how many kids would still be alive if their friends would have told the things that they were doing to their mothers to prevent them from continuing that road that laid them to the grave. So I look at it a little bit different today. I knew I was going to get a label. Listen, I cried for days without end. Once I cooperated, I was placed in solitary confinement in the beginning of my incarceration. and I cried like a baby. It broke my heart to do what I did. But after reading a lot of God's word, I just felt it was the right thing to do, because I was reading so much where in Ezekiel talks about being the watchman. If you warn the people and they don't heed to their warning, the blood is on their hands. But if you don't warn them, the blood is on your hands. So that kind of helped me a little bit. But the main thing was to save my own neck. I didn't want to stay in jail for 20 years. And I thought maybe through a witness protection program, I would get my family back.
And we're going to talk about your family later. I want to dive into that, but I want to get a few more stories. You had this big fight. It was very dramatic in the book with Tommy, Frankie, and some big guy, man. And it was like a bunch of you trying to get this guy, man. This guy seemed like he was pretty formidable. Tell us about that fight.
Well, we were coming out of a bar. I'm not going to tell the whole story because some of it's just, I'm not going to tell the whole thing. We were coming out of a bar. It was 4 o'clock. Me and my friend had a girl. This is the first time I took my brother out with me. He was a legit kid, worked hard. I said, come out, let's have a good time. So he comes out. We're hanging out at the bar. It's time to go home. Matter of fact, it's his car that was driving us around to pick us up. So this guy comes as we're trying to get in the car to leave, and he wants drugs. And you know, I was the first one to approach him. That was just me. I always had to be the first one. And I said, listen, we don't mess with drugs, nothing like that. He said, no, you guys got to give me drugs. So he grabbed one of my friends and put a knife to his throat and said, if you guys don't give me any drugs, now we really didn't have any drugs. We were just drinkers at that time. And I told him, I said, we don't have any drugs. So he slit the kid's throat. He lived, but he slit his throat and dropped him on the floor. And then he came towards us. And that's the big fight that started. The guy ended up getting stabbed, I think 18 times. That's the guy that died. And that's the guy that I was wanted for that murder, me, my friend. And that's when my friend's father hit us out from that case down.
I mean, so man, but that's what's interesting is that, you know, as you tell these stories, one would make an assumption that, you know, that the first murder that you got involved with may have been, you know, you having to whack somebody for something, but this was self-defense, and he came at you guys for no reason, approached you unwarrantedly, slit your friend's throat, and you guys had to fight him, several of you.
Yeah.
So that seemed like that was a very traumatizing event for you.
It was. What I look back now, that was a year and a half, maybe a little bit more than a year and a half that I'm secluded from my family. They can't know where I am, nothing. And I really see that today as had a great impact on my life. But I came back now, I had to be this big tough guy kind of thing, even more so.
So that event was kind of like a defining moment, what kind of catapulted you into a certain reputation.
From being away from my family and being more connected with the Gambino crime family. Because those were the guys that were taking care of me at that point in time. In a sense, they became my mom and dad for that period of time. But they were taking care of me, making sure I had food, a place to stay, and all these things. Yeah, it was, I look back now on it, man, and I think about how much damage I did to my family, man, and I didn't even think about it back then. I mean, it's just sad. It's pretty sad.
So a couple more stories. Tell us about the robbery of the home in Long Island.
Which one?
There's a robbery in the book you talked about. It was you guys ended up robbing a house in Long Island.
Oh, wow. Oh, well, there's a couple of them. Okay, let's close that this one. There was somebody gave up a score that the guy, I don't know, won some money about.
Hold on, what is Have cans in it from the street. Okay, so there was a score.
Yeah, there was somebody gave us information on this guy that won a lot of money. He was a half a knockaround guy. I really didn't care who he was. I didn't want to know who he was. And he wasn't going to be home, so we went to the house, and his wife happened to be home, and I pretended I was a delivery guy, and we robbed the house.
It's just very simple, like. All right. What happened at the Broadcasters Inn?
That's the second murder that I was. That's actually the murder that I went to trial for, and it was a fight that happened. Once again, my reputation, it was a big thing. I was like the guy for Broadcasters Inn. Everybody came around the tables that I was hanging out in. That's also where I met Phyllis all over again for the first time. So it was a big thing. And it was my birthday, and they were throwing a birthday party for me, and everybody was there. And I'm walking a couple of girls out, and this one guy was walking out, but he closes the door and hits the girl's foot. And once again, they're disrespecting me. I'm with the girls. So I started with the guy, and then a big fight boiled out, and somebody got killed that night in the Broadcasters. And I was not wanted right away for the murder. But as I went back for one case, and I got left for both murders, but for the gun case, I think, I got locked up for that case. There was cameras and all that. There was supposed to be this big, really case. They got the guy that killed him, but I really didn't do it. So I went to trial with 5 eyewitnesses, and they all told a story that didn't match up with the forensics reports and stuff like that. So I got acquitted of that case.
It can be. Okay.
I can feel your throat dry.
He's killing me. He's killing me.
I can hear it. No, that's a split. That's a split. Yeah, it's for 670 nice.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. There you go.
Some of these cases I just don't go into a lot of detail with, because last thing I want to do is try to promote that. I mean, these things did happen to me. They're true stories. But
Yeah, well, Barry, we're not promoting it. You should know this is what happened in your lives.
it did, yeah.
So we're just telling the truth.
Yeah, well, it is the truth. There's no lie about it.
Yeah. Okay, a couple more stories, and then we're gonna transition into what I know you want to talk about.
Yes. That's what lights me up.
Yeah, we're gonna transition here a little bit, but I got a couple more.
I should have brought a white suit for that one.
You said amen? Okay, great. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Who was Ronnie? What happened at Jojo Corozzo Social Club? There's something that happened there at that social club.
Oh, yes. Ronnie, my friend Ronnie, his name, we called him Ronnie One Arm because he only had one arm. One of his arms was paralyzed from an accident that he had. So he was going out with this girl whose sister was going out with this guy, Vinny. I'm not going to say last names. Daughter. And Ronnie, I think, did something to the girl, and the sister told her boyfriend told her father, who happened to be a made man. And Ronnie thought he was going to have a beef with him, so we're going to protect Ronnie. So Ronnie let me know, and a couple of us were in the club making sure that, I don't know how to explain it to you, but if there's a beef between two people, you can only go after either one of you have to try to kill each other, or nobody else could do it. So anyway, long story short, we protected Ronnie, and at the same time, somebody across the street comes running to the club saying this kid got stabbed. and we wanted to go find out what happened. And what we all packing guns, and there was some guys that stabbed this kid. And long story short, 2 of them ended up getting killed for stabbing that kid. Is that the story you're talking about?
That Michael, the guy stabbed?
No, Michael was my good friend that got.
Man, there's a lot of stabbing going on. A lot of stabbing and shooting. Okay, so tell us about Michael that got stabbed.
Michael was my childhood friend. Michael was a good friend. He was a legitimate kid, fell on hard times, came around me. I brought him around Nicky and them, and he started working, doing things for Nicky, numbers and stuff like that, for this guy, Nicky's partner, Lenny. And we were out one night, and we were drinking, and we went into this diner to... Usually everybody went to this diner after 4 or 5 in the morning to hang out and eat. And Michael, there was a fight that broke out. I was fighting one guy. We were going across the street to fight. And the fight broke out while I was walking across the street. And this guy ended up stabbing Michael in the heart. And I rushed him to the hospital, but he died there.
How did that do anything to you, or is it another day in the life?
No, it devastated me because it's not supposed to happen when I'm around. People are supposed to respect me. They shouldn't be doing that to anybody that's around me. That was my first thing. The second thing was I got to get even with the guy that did it. I can't let that slide. And then after a long sit down in Mulberry Street, I was told that I couldn't touch the guy that did it. But if I wanted, I could kill one of the guys that was there, and that made no sense to me. I wasn't going to kill somebody that didn't do it. I wanted to kill the guy that did do it, so I just let it go.
Yeah, so they gave you it bars you from getting revenge on the person that...
The guy that did it was a very powerful guy that did a lot of favors for the bosses in the Gambino crime family, and he, at that point in time, he was untouchable at that point in time.
Did he ever get any, his as they say, comeuppance later in life?
He's serving life in prison now for somebody did what I did and gave up information on a couple of other murders. I don't think he got convicted for that murder, but he got convicted for some other stuff. So he's in jail for the rest of his life.
So last story, and then we're gonna transition. There's this funny story in the book where you and Little Joe were kind of hanging out, sitting in the living room, watching the Mets game, watching the Mets beat the Astros, and the cops came to the door.
I don't remember that one.
You don't remember that one?
No.
You guys were...
What did we do?
You were there hiding, and then the
Cops came in while we were watching TV.
Yeah, you were watching. You said that you were watching the Mets pound the Astros, and then there was a knock at the door. You were at the door, and you were like, "Who is it?" There were cops at the door.
I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Man, you're in so many stories, Robert.
Well, how can I remember them all? I mean, there was a frequent thing. Cops came around a lot. I mean, I can't remember what every reason was for that they came around.
And you probably watched the Mets a lot?
I was a Met fan.
You're a Mets guy?
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's sad.
Yeah, I know.
It's tough.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
Why not the Yankees?
Because they traded Roger Maris when I was a kid. They should have never did that. He was my hero.
So you had a grudge.
Most people had Mickey Mantle. I choose Roger Maris. And the year I choose him, he had 61 home runs.